each year for this as well. And biodynamics is a farming method or philosophy started in 1924 by an Austrian scientist named Rudolf Steiner. Now, you actually may have heard of his name in other contexts as well. He was a scientist and a philosopher, also an educator. The Waldorf school system, for instance, same Rudolf Steiner. It's the oldest form of non-chemical farming going on. It predates organic farming by more than 20 years. And, well, actually goes way beyond organic farming, too. It's a lot more stringent, and there's certainly a lot more to it. We'll talk just a bit about this as we go along. In the meantime, though, we're not using any pesticides or herbicides or chemical or artificial fertilizers here on the ranch, and haven't now for over 13 years. Now, as you can imagine, there's the occasional challenge associated with this, to say the least. If you look at Sonoma Mountain up above us there, by God, it looks pretty healthy. Sure was last time I was hiking around up that way. Of course, there's nobody getting up in the morning and farming that land. Well, Mother Nature struck a balance of things there. Seems to work out pretty well. Down here, we've tipped that balance with all these grapevines. How to keep the soils vital and rich. How to keep the vines healthy and strong. How to control diseases and pests. Some of the things we've got to do. Well, one of the first things the family's done about all this right here behind me, I call it the bug farm. The Bedsiger prefer insectary. They're paying for the signs. We have 3 of these on the property, actually, and for that matter, the plantings you see everywhere, along the walkways and driveways, the fruit trees, the garden areas, the olive trees, over 700 olive trees on the ranch now. It's all with this in mind, anyway. Research has shown us just what we need to have planted here to attract those beneficial insects, those good bugs that we want back into the vineyards. They help us with things like pollination and also natural predators for certain of our pests. So we're using these guys instead of the pesticides. Now, for every acre of the grapevines that you see around us are produced every year somewhere between 2 and 8 tons of grapes. That's the range roughly, depending on the variety, where it's planted, and so on. It's a pretty good drain on the soil, as you can imagine. We're not using the chemical fertilizers. So, among other things, most everything here is composted. Landscape trimmings, of course, the trimmings of the vines themselves. Also, the leftovers of the winemaking process. The skins of the seeds, the stems, the leaves, and so on. All composted and work back into the soil. Now, the philosophy, so to speak, goes beyond just the farming methods to gives guidelines for reestablishing the balance of things here and then making the ecosystem sustainable. Among other things, you might have spotted some of the bird boxes around the property. They're everywhere. Little ones for our western bluebirds, for instance, are great caterpillar and grub eaters. The larger ones for things like owls and hawks, kestrels, falcons, and so on. They help control the rodent population, first of all. Turns out gophers kind of like grapevine roots. But they also help control and scare away those flocking fruit-eating birds that can really do damage to a ripe crop. We recycle all the water used in production. The ponds and wetlands are planted accordingly to add to the biodiversity here. And then we actually plant cover crops between the rows of the vines every year. Now, we can't rotate the grapevines. It's sort of a permanent fixture. They're hopefully going to be good for a few decades at least. We can rotate what goes between them, though, and the cover crop serves 3 purposes for us. Erosion control, first of all, during our rainy season. We're done with that now. In fact, we had the first measurable rain in July in my memory, I think, in 76 years. So we don't get any rain this time of the year normally. We also use them to amend the soils along with the compost. So we'll be planting different things depending on the soil's needs. Sometimes it might be more of the legumes, other times a certain grass and certain clovers are very important. Sometimes certain mustards. Again, whatever the soils are in need of. And then the plantings also provide cover and habitat for these good bugs, the beneficial insects to propagate, work their way back into the vineyards. So I guess wage their bug wars, but make sure everything's good for us. Another, benefit of our practices here is that the wild yeast that exists in nature are flourishing on this ranch to help the environment. Yeast is important during the fermentation process, and we'll be talking about that now in just a minute up at the crush pad. That's our next stop. Whenever we can ferment on the natural yeast, the wines are going to be that much more flavorful and also more unique to this particular operation. That's something really the Benzigers try to do whenever they possibly can. So, biodynamics, anyways, like the highest form of organic farming in the world, it goes beyond just the elimination of all chemicals, though. One of the big differences are the 8 different biodynamic preparations that are made and applied here on the property during the course of the year. Sort of like the homeopathic remedies we might take ourselves, I guess. Of course, so many of our medicines come from natural sources. Well, here they're making concoctions from everything from the stinging nettles to yarrow and chamomile, dandelion, teas, valerian root. The horn preparations, the silica sprays, these are sprayed either onto the vines themselves, perhaps into the soils, or onto the compost pile. stimulate microbial activity, perhaps to stimulate root growth, or perhaps it's an actual remedy for certain things. We're also farming with the rhythms of nature and really incorporating the environment and all the natural influences on these grapevines. What this does is help produce grapes that really reflect the soils and the conditions and the environment in which they're being grown. This gives them a special sense of place or authenticity that the family's looking for. And we're trying to capture the spirit of this place and put it in the bottle. And in addition, the knowledge we gain from doing things this way, we're able to impart to the growers. To the extent, at least among our group now, over 90% are practicing at least some sustainable farming methods. And actually, the family just announced this last year. They want to get that to 100% by 2008. So it is something you'll be hearing a lot more about anyway, mainly because the results have been so good. I love coming up here every day, needless to say, but after my 30-whatever years in the bar and restaurant business, if things don't show up in the bottle, I will maybe be a little skeptical sometimes. They have been, and actually you'll be tasting a couple wines made from grapes grown this way in just a little bit. In the meantime, though, let's go ahead and climb back aboard our tram, and we'll take you